Alright, so there's probably nothing worse than providing a client with a two-dimensional sounding mix, okay? It sounds like a cardboard box, it doesn't sound good. Alright, we want depth, we want width in our mixes, and I'm going to show you a few techniques on how to actually achieve this when either recording or mixing vocals. So since we are a vocal-based channel, I will be primarily focusing on how to get wider vocals, but when it comes to instrumentals, alright, if you have the stems, if you're using a 2-track instrumental, make sure that those instruments in the mix are nice and wide, okay? You can make use of a Ozone, Imager, whatever you have to really get that kind of opening up of the mid-range. You really want to make that mid-range punch, you know. So my best advice is to really get high quality instrumentals. If you're an artist, if you're an engineer, really just focus on getting that mid-range wide, okay? That's all I'll really say on that. But let's get straight into vocals. So the most obvious trick that I give people is to just make use of backgrounds, okay? Record a doubler, record some background left and right. This is a traditional trick that has been used for many, many years to get that instant widened sound, okay? If you double up your vocals, you are going to have more room to pan these around, add in different flanges and whatnot. So I'll just give you a quick example. We've got our vocals right here, and you know, in a place like this, we can add in that emphasized doubler that is going to make the vocal kind of pop out more, okay?
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning. I cannot stop getting all this money, I'm money fiending. All these clones try to steer the wave, it's so easy to see, yeah.
Right, you can see off the bat we just have this really glorious wide sounding mix simply because we decided to add in a bit of a doubler and decided to add in a kind of left and right vocal that all we do is just pan hard left and right, okay? So this is the simplest, quickest way to get some widened vocals. It makes things sound rich in the right context, alright? So check that out. Okay, but let's just say you're in a situation where you don't actually have access to any more doublers. You're a mixer and now you're stuck, right? You really have to get that widened vocal sound. Well, I have some solutions. So the first thing we can actually do is make use of a stereo emulated plugin. Now the best company out there to do this is going to be Brainworks, okay? If Brainworks have a sale again, definitely consider picking up one of their channel strips, one of their EQ plugins, any plugin that makes use of what they call TMT technology, okay? Now what this allows you to do is basically emulate what we are doing on analog mixing consoles, okay? In a traditional studio where we've got an analog console, we are going to usually be putting the main vocal through 2 channels, okay? Now, this is what happens in the Brainworks channel. You can see we have our main vocal going through channel 1 and 2. This turns our vocal into a stereo channel. Why? Because every channel on a console is going to sound a little bit different, okay? So when we bring that back into the box, we've already got this kind of slight difference in what this does to our ears. It makes it sound like the vocal is wider than it is, right? When we start to EQ 2 different channels, we get the low end sounding a little bit different. We get the high end sounding a little bit different. So this is personally what I like to do on a main vocal channel. I've been doing this for the past 2-3 years now, and my vocals just sound way wider. So I definitely consider you to check out, this is the Brainworks N. This is emulating a kind of Neve console, one of the newer Neve consoles. You've got the SSL, G series, E series, etc. Find what you like, take a demo out and test different things out, okay? Just because it's a stereo plugin does not mean it's going to be emulating the left and right different. I would highly recommend checking out Brainworks, so definitely do that. Alright, so after I have kind of added a stereo console emulated channel strip, what I'm going to be doing is adding on a little bit of flanger and maybe delay, okay? This is going to allow the vocal to kind of sound a little bit wide. It's going to kind of push the vocal back into the mix via modulation and via a bit of kind of spacing with the delay. Okay, it's very simple. There's a very simple technique to do. If I just solo out the main vocal real quick.
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning.
Right, we've got that vocal right there. It's sounding good. If I actually just mute all of these sends, which we'll talk about just now, you can hear what happens to the main vocal, right?
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning. I cannot stop getting all this money, I'm money fiending.
Can you see that difference between the left and the right channel? That is a combination of that flanger and that slap, as well as this channel, the stereo channel we have going on. It's already sounding great, right? I could actually just increase the stereo width and you can hear the main difference.
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning. I cannot stop getting all this money, I'm money fiending.
Right, it's very subtle, but it just sounds amazing. So once we've added that treatment onto the main vocal, it is now time to really add on a few effects sends. auxes, groups, whatever you want to call them, okay, I'm essentially sending the main vocal into a few different effect channels where I can then increase the wideness via duplication. So the main effect I'm always going to be having on the main vocal is a little bit of flanger, okay? I'm always going to be focusing on that flanger. Now my flanger or modulation effect of choice is going to be the hardware H3000, okay? This is just a staple, you know, since the 90s, since the 80s, people have just been adding a little bit of this effect in the background of every vocal, and it just widens up the mix even more. Okay, so I'll allow you to hear that H3000 hardware effect soloed out.
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning. I cannot stop getting all this money, I'm money fiending.
And as you can hear, it's got this kind of weird pitched sound, but it's nice and wide. There's a time delay on it, and it just sounds magical, okay? There's a reason why people are still wanting these boxes, okay? If I add in that main vocal,
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning.
wait, let's actually get rid of everything else so we can really hear it.
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning. I cannot stop getting all this money, I'm money fiending.
Right, we really get this cool, interesting sense of depth added. Now, if you are not able to get H3000, I do have a solution for FL Studio users. We've got the F3000, which is a cool emulation we have made for FL Studio users. It has a very similar sound.
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning. I cannot stop getting all.
Right, so you can check that out if you're an FL Studio user, but nonetheless, you know, we want to get that kind of width going. We want to add onto the track, okay? Next thing that I like to use is a little bit of reverb. Now, reverb is going to be very much song specific. You don't want to have a crazy long reverb on a song that is tight. You know, you get the idea. Personally, I like to use this Eventide SP2016. It's a really cool emulation of a vintage reverb again. I love the vintage sound, and I've kind of just got this preset that I like. You know, nice long pre-delay, nice long decay, but again, I can switch these settings up. The point is, I've got a little bit of a reverb sound that is going to make the vocal sound a bit more natural, as if it was recorded in a bigger space. Okay, we can add that in, and I've got the stereo width set all the way wide, so you can hear with that as well.
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning. I cannot stop getting all.
Beautiful, right? It's just kind of adding it in there. You know, it takes a few months maybe to find the reverb that you like, but definitely mess around with different reverbs. There's many things out there. Again, what we can also do is add in a nice little slap. Kind of got an H delay slap right here, just a really short, it's not even really a slap you can call it, but it's 33 milliseconds, and I just add that in with a bit of stereo width, and I get this really cool wide delay thing going on, you know.
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning.
You know, and I mix all those things together and I end up with this really cool kind of, you know, kind of thing sitting behind the vocal. So definitely mess around with different effects. I've got delays as well that I bring in to add more emphasis, right? So for example, right here.
Who can I trust? You keep wanting.
Who can I trust? Trust. Those add in a little sense of depth. So definitely check those out. Those are effects sense. All right, so another trick we can make use of is actually just to add in some other samples, right? Now what I like to do is I like to add in transitions, okay? Transitions I add in the background to just give more emphasis to changes in the song. Okay, this is something I've been doing for a very long time. You can check out my personal pack that I sell on the web store as well. This is the HYPERDRIVE effects pack. I've sent all of these samples through hardware and EQ'd them and added stereo width using the SSL Fusion, and I can just slot those into a mix. You can really hear how beautiful it sounds. You know, it's in the background, maybe you don't notice it, but it's there, and you can just hear right here.
I got money like professors. Engineer think I'm Elon Musk. Snakes in the grass, who can I trust?
Right, just it's, you know what I mean? It's like a little, you know, coming in and out the track, right? So here as well, we've got 3 samples stacked up, a little bit of sound design.
Oh, that's your girl I see. I put a 4 in my lemonade.
And it just sounds so good, man. I mean, these have been EQ'd properly. Right, just little things like that are going to add a little bit more variation and depth to your track, so definitely consider that. Right, so the last technique that I like to make use of is actually just to add a little bit of stereo imaging onto the vocal bus itself, right? If I've got different types of vocals running into the vocal bus or the all vocals group, whatever you want to call it, I tend to sometimes add on this Ozone plugin. Again, you could use the Waves S1. I personally like this one because it allows me to treat different bands or different parts of the frequency spectrum quite easily. Okay, so what I like to do, and you know, this is based on each song, right? This song has a very nice low end kind of wideness, so I wanted to do that on the vocals as well. So in this case, okay, I'm adding on a little bit of kind of sub-bass vocal width. It's not really that noticeable, but it just kind of modulates the vocal a little bit, you know, emphasizes, you know, the doubler, emphasizes that flanger we have on the main vocal. And then I'm also going the same direction on the lower mids, right? I'm kind of widening up that lower mid end of the vocal, okay? I'm getting this cool sound. I'm also, most importantly, adding on a little bit of wideness on the treble. Every one of those that kind of top end of the vocal, we're spreading just a little bit more to really help us get that kind of cool wide sound. Okay, so I'll just kind of just make sure to copy these values because the undo button doesn't work so well. But we'll just do this real quick.
I put a 4 in my lemonade and now I'm leaning. I cannot stop getting all this money, I'm money fiending.
Right, it's very subtle, but it's just doing something to the vocal. So there you go, man. Those are all of the techniques that I make use of to get wider, more expensive sounding mixes. Definitely, you know, consider checking me out on Zoom if you want to have a conversation, consultation, etc, etc. If you want custom presets, check that out as well. If you're an FL Studio user, check out different presets that we have, as well as links to my vocal recording course and vocal mixing course for FL Studio, where I run through recording and mixing like a pro. But have a good time mixing, and I'll check you out next time. Peace out.